Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you game 1 out of 2 games between Mjtheko and Ddraig in round 5 of the second European tournament. Today we are going to be seeing Carpiquet, and on the allied side Mjtheko is going to be using the Guards Armoured, and on the Axis side Ddraig is going to be using the 116th Panzer. Now this matchup screams Cromwell 7. It's something that I do mention a lot with the Guards Armoured, but especially against the 116th, I think the Cromwell 7 can do a lot of work against both the Marders and the Panzer IIIs if it is used correctly. So that is something that we are going to have to keep an eye on. The other thing that we're going to have to look at is smoke and how that is utilised. I think that the Cromwell 7 will need smoke support if it is going to be used in the open against the Marders. So whether or not there is a choice between the 2-inch mortar carrier, the 25 pounder, I think you can even get a Sexton in Phase A. If any of those are brought in early on, I think Mjtheko is going to be on his way to defeating those Marders quite nicely and then being able to dominate the top side of the map, at least for the beginning of the game. However, this town is going to be an interesting one because both sides don't really have significant infantry. The 116th is well known for their lack of availability. They can only bring in 4 Panzer Grenadiers and 2 MGs, and that is if you decide to bring in all 3 cards in Phase A. Whereas on the side of the Guards Armoured, you do have rifles and you have motorised rifles. Motorised rifles in Phase A, at least. And those, I think, also lack a significant amount of availability and also veterancy. So it's going to be an interesting infantry matchup, one that could swing in favour of the 116th if they use 20mm autocannons and the Flam Panzers correctly. But of course, the Guards Armoured do have the Humber Mark IIIs, which can counter those vehicles. Let's have a look at the deployment on the side of Ddraig. So on the top side here we have the 2341 with the Marder 3. There's also going to be the MG up there, MG42. There's MG42 for the top side of the town where these hangars are, and I believe that would be a Panzer Gren actually heading into the town. Then further down we see another Panzer Grenadier being accompanied by the Flam Panzer and the SBW 232. That combination of units could very easily deal with this bottom side if there isn't any significant armour in the town, which it doesn't look like it's going to be if we have a look at Mjtheko's side of things. So he has a 6-pounder here, accompanied by a Humber Mark III with a recon. Further up we see a motorised rifles. There's going to be these rifles as well, with the command in there. Stuart 6 is actually on the way to the town, so that could make quite a big difference. And the Humber Mark III heading up to the airfield with some recon. Then for the actual airfield itself, there's just going to be the Cromwell 7 moving up the main airstrip, and then we have a motorised rifle heading to the top side. So this is going to be really, really interesting. I'm very much looking forward to seeing this matchup in action. But I think the Guards Armoured in general will have the upper hand due to availability and economy throughout the game. You can see that in Phase A, Mjtheko is only 10 points behind Ddraig, but when it goes to Phase B, he's 25 points ahead, and that could really make quite a big difference depending on how the early game goes for either player. So we can see the Marder that's going to be trying to get a shot onto the M5 half-track here. M5 half-track has managed to make its way towards the hangar there, but that's not motorised rifles, it's Bren Group. Bren Group in the M5 half-tracks. That's an interesting matchup, or combination of units at least. Not often you see the Bren Group brought in with the M3 half-track, just because both units aren't that fantastic, and it does seem like a bit of a waste when you could gain the 8 HE of the motorised rifles with the Piat, especially when it comes in terms of like taking up slots in the division. But either way, 6-pounder does take out the half-track here, and that does reveal its location. So you can see Ddraig has backed off But the Humber Mark III is going to be able to find shots onto the Panzer Grenadiers, which is quite nice. Does a little bit of damage there, takes out 2 men. On the top side, M5 half-track has been forced back for now. Bren Group opening up onto the MG42 is probably not a good idea. But the Cromwell 7's in a nice position to try and take on the Marder 3. I'm surprised that Mjtheko is not going for that engagement. I think if the Cromwell 7 is within the 1,000 meter range, there is no reason why you shouldn't go for an engagement. Anyway, 232 is going to be taking on the Humber Mark III, and this is a matchup that is very close, especially at this sort of range, but that is very significant. Panzer Grenadiers take out the Stuart 6 in the town, and that's going to make things very awkward for Mjtheko. On the bottom side, the Humber Mark III does go down, and now these rifles and motorized rifles do not have any real armored support that can stop this 20mm from running all over them. Same deal with the Flampanzer, which is going to absolutely melt the motorized rifles. Panzer Grenadiers have managed to take care of the rifles here as well, and now Ddraig's going to be moving up with his Panzergrens to try and get the Panzerfaust on the target of the Humber Mark III. So this is a devastating start here for Mjtheko in the town, because he's lost all of his armoured support. Fortunately, does have the 6-pounder that may stop Ddraig from rushing on through, but Ddraig's going to have noticed the amount of units he's picked off here, and will be able to start pushing quite aggressively with his Panzer Grenadiers. Now, usually you'd want to keep the Panzer Grenadiers alive, and unit preservation, especially for infantry with the 116th, is very important. But when you have a 20mm autocannon backing you up and your opponent has literally nothing, then it's a completely different story, and you have an excuse to really push aggressively with these Panzergrens because of that. Now, following up the bottom side is going to be some recon and the Panzerwerfer. Now, the Panzerwerfer can certainly help out against this 6-pounder, so I like that choice a lot. Panzer Grenadiers now going to be engaging rifles at close range. The rifles do have the upper hand in terms of HE, but the Panzergrens, of course, do have the 3-star veterancy. 232, that's going to get up close and personal though, and we'll be firing a 20mm through those windows very, very shortly. Flampanzer's now going to be pushing into the town more aggressively. I'm surprised this isn't being fast moved down to the bottom side, or maybe just through and round, because just in general the Piats don't like to hit things that are moving, and so that's something that Ddraig could take advantage of. Panzer Grenadiers here though, they're being played with. The rifles are jumping in and out to avoid the reload of the 232 or the aim time, and that's really, really smart actually. I love that play, so that he can kill off this Panzergren without actually being shot at by the 20mm. Now the Stuart 6s come into play though, and that may make a difference here. Stuart 6 now opening up onto the Panzer Grenadiers, but you can see on the airfield a Stuart 6 has come in, and that's now been bailed out by the Marder 3. Now this Cromwell's just been a complete null factor throughout this game so far, and I feel like the fact that it's not contesting the Marder 3 is a big mistake. But on the bottom side, the Stuart 6 does take out the Flampanzer, but gets forced back by the Panzerschreck, and that also forces the fall back onto the M5 half-track. The rifles get cleaned up by the 232, so Mjtheko loses his little salient on the bottom side, and his units are definitely under threat, with the 232 getting very aggressive. The Stuart 6 does not have a weapon it can fire since his weapons are jammed, and therefore the 232 is likely to either get a kill or just a straight up surrender here. That's going to be an engine stall. Only a matter of time until the 232 gets on target, and there we go, job done. Another infantry squad going to get killed as they try and cross the road. So a very intricate engagement in this town. Of course, Ddraig doesn't really have the infantry he can throw into these engagements, and now losing both of his Panzer Grenadiers makes things pretty difficult, and he's going to have to bring in the remaining 2 that he has access to in Phase A. And this is the remainder of his infantry that he has access to until Phase B now, so that may be something that Mjtheko can exploit after his really nice micro with that infantry. So now we can see the 6-pounder coming into play. The positioning of the 6-pounder is actually really nice, but the Panzerwerfer may be able to deal with that. It depends if it can get a couple rockets on target. That's really what Ddraig is going to be looking for here. Now it looks like it's going to survive, so that's still a threat for the Panzer III, the 250-10 and all of these vehicles that are trying to press forwards. This Panzer III though, being very, very aggressive here. Really not caring about these rifles and the motorized rifle leader. You can't be sure that there isn't Piats here, so this is a pretty risky move, but one that could pay off if there isn't any, so there is a reason to push forwards because of that. But the half-track, that's going to go down after the grenades from the rifles do end up taking out that half-track. But here we go. More units pressing on. And those reinforcing infantry, they've really been allowed to push all the way through. It's incredible. But can the 6-pounder take out a Panzer Grenadier before it unloads? Nearly. Ddraig notices it and stops it from happening. A bit of a mistake in my opinion for Ddraig to actually fall that half-track back. It was very unlikely to get in cover before the 6-pounder fired again. So just allowing the MG to continue firing may have caused a kill due to the 3-star veterancy that the half-track had. Either way, Panzer Grenadiers, they're going to get into the face of some motorized rifle leader. The machine guns from the Panzer III certainly help out there. 250-10 going to be engaging the Cromwell 4, but not an ideal engagement for the 250-10. That has the potential to get killed, just like that. But the Panzer III may be able to take advantage of the fact that the Cromwell 7 did get pinned slightly, but with the Cromwell 7 finding the first shot, it's lucky the Panzer III is still alive because that first shot bounced off the front armour. Panzer III looks to be almost getting the better of the Cromwell 4, and if the 232 gets off more 20mm ammunition, then it might just do so. And if that occurs, then Mjtheko loses control of his tank, and that is going to cost him dearly. Now a sexton has been brought in and is going to be trying to smoke off, but not quite in time. Now the 232 is getting very aggressive, wants to find out what is firing. The sexton can protect itself. It does have 12 AP and 4 front armor, but at this sort of range the 232 may be able to just about get the job done. This 6-pounder has to find the kill, and it does. Sexton survives to fight another day. However, revealing its position there, comes under fire from the MG42, and that is taking it down to 3 men. But a wonderful position here for Ddraig. Has also spotted himself another target for the Panzerwerfer, so is going to be firing away. A little pocket here from Mjtheko, just caused by the motorized rifle leader. Surprised that Ddraig is not hunting for the unit that is here with a single half-track. That would be a reasonable idea. But on the bottom side, losing some motorized rifles like that is very careless, allowing the half-track to go down and then the motorized rifle be surrendered before they'd even lost a man is quite something. More so though is the Panzerwerfer missing every single rocket onto the 6-pounder. This is exactly what happens when I use Panzerwerfers. The rockets go everywhere except from the target, and it is very, very frustrating to deal with because you then have to keep mopping up low health AT guns with salvos that could be used elsewhere. Either way, Panzer III going to be taking out another half-track there, nice and easy with its machine gun. Stuart 6 going to try and reply with its gun against the 251 here, but just in general, Ddraig's done a fantastic job of taking control of this town early. It will definitely make a large difference moving forwards, since Mjtheko is going to have to find a way to break through the edge of the town and then deep into the town, which is the hardest part, really, especially against a division that lacks availability in general. I think Ddraig's put himself in a really good position because he doesn't have to rely on that much infantry due to his positioning. 232 though has found the motorized rifle leader here. They are going to smoke themselves off, but you can see that Ddraig has cut off this bottom side. I'm surprised that these are actually causing so much land to be taken in favour of Mjtheko. Ddraig's going to really want to clean those up. Panzer, it looks like it was sneaking to try and find the Sexton, takes a shot from the Stuart 6, goes down. Not entirely sure what the Sexton's firing at. MG42 though has found shots onto the 6-pounder once again, just using the full range there, the 800 meters, to just chase that down. You can see that Ddraig's given that the attack move order to try and kill the 6-pounder nice and easy. But what is interesting is that there's a Firefight 5C coming in onto the field, and that changes a lot of things, because there is only the Marder 3 really standing in the way of the Firefly from making a lot of ground. So this could be the way in which Mjtheko comes back into the game. Rather than focusing on pushing back into the town, just pressing through the airfield and possibly surrounding the town may be a better idea, and something that I certainly agree with, especially since the Cromwell 7 is still sitting there having done nothing throughout the game so far. I would warn other people, when you are going to bring in a unit that costs 120 points at the start of the game and not use it at all, that is definitely not a good idea. Let's see if the Panzer 3 can defeat the Stuart 6. It looks like it will do. The internal fire there is certainly a start, but Mjtheko going to be moving that behind the tree line to stop it being shot at again. Making the right moves for sure. I think Mjtheko's his micro, is quite good, but unfortunately losing the town with some sort of tactical mistakes has definitely cost him. Now the Pioneers, they've moved through, they've cleaned up the motorized rifle leader now, which is going to give a +2 to Ddraig. That means he's going to win in 16 minutes. This certainly puts the clock onto Mjtheko, and he's got a lot of work to do. He has a Sherman 5 on the way. That is going to be moving down to the bottom side to potentially help out against these motorized rifles. But until he gets the upper hand against his armor is not going to be able to support properly. Now one thing that Ddraig could do is put all of his units onto return fire at the edge here, because Mjtheko has not invested in any recon, and that's a big problem. But Stuart 6 is going to get the upper hand onto the Panzer 3. That's a bailout. Panzer 4 on the top side of the town is going to get taken out by the Firefly 5C, and now the Marder 3 goes down. That Firefly has done work. Really nice job indeed. 250-10 is going to try and stop the Stuart 6 in its tracks, but this has potential written all over it here for Mjtheko. If he can get this Cromwell 7 nice and aggressive, the Firefly continuing to push over this airfield, he can make a ton of ground. But Ddraig is going to be reacting with a Jagdpanzer. Now the Jagdpanzer is still at a disadvantage to a Firefly, because the Firefly has 2 more AP than the Jagdpanzer's armor, whilst the Jagdpanzer only has 1 more AP than the Firefly's armor. Also, the Firefly has that extra veterancy, so should hit more often. Therefore, the Firefly has the advantage. But if he's not careful, then airstrikes could play a part, and here comes a Ju-87 that could certainly change things around. The Jagdpanzer is going to one-shot the Cromwell 7. That's something that Ddraig's not going to have to worry about anymore. So this Ju-87 is going to go for the kill onto the Firefly 5C. Can it find it? Taking all the shots it needs. Internal fragments. Can it finish the job? No, it cannot. Drive and knock might allow the Jagdpanzer to make some ground here. But here comes the Ju-87 for shots onto the Stuart 6. Can it find it before the Tempest shoots it down? No, it cannot. Tempest does the job, stops that Ju-87 in its tracks, but the Firefly is going to have to fall back for the time being, and this will relinquish ground to Ddraig on the airfield. 250-10, I'm surprised this is still alive, since it has been engaging the Stuart 6 for quite some time. And the Stuart 6, if it hits on target, should kill the 2 front armor half track there quite easily. But one thing that is something that I should point out is how well that Ddraig is like holding on to the edge of this town. Like generally, when Sherman 5s and so on come in, it does make it quite easy to push into a defensive position like this with infantry. But the positioning of Ddraig's units here and the way he's using line of sight is really good, because it's allowing him to kill off the infantry that's approaching without putting himself in danger of being attacked by the Sherman 5s, because Mjtheko doesn't have enough tanks to really cover all angles, and that's a problem. Now also the Stuart 6 has gone down, so that makes the problem even worse. But he is going to be able to resupply this Firefly that did take that internal fragmentation. So that Firefly is going to be back online and will hopefully engage the Jagdpanzer quite nicely. So Panzer 3 on its way. Not really going to be able to do too much against the Sherman 5, because the 11 front armor really does counteract the 10 AP that the Sherman or the Panzer 3 has to offer. Nice kill though onto the 250-10, finally takes care of that. Sherman 5 is using its machine guns to engage the 232 whilst using its main gun to hit the Panzer 3. Cromwell 6 now getting involved as well, another support unit to try and help out against these infantry that are entrenched on the edge of the town. I like the addition of the Mobilwagen here from Ddraig, really good for controlling the skies, especially when you are trying to utilise things like the Ju-87. So that should help out in the future. Unfortunately, the last time round it did not. But now we see Mjtheko, he's going to be focusing on Assault Pioneers. Now Assault Pioneers, it's going to be difficult for them to make ground because they don't really have any effect until they get to the 100-meter range. And currently, Ddraig is covering the angles against infantry, and the Sherman 5 has actually died here. I'm not sure if that was due to the Panzer 3, but if it was, that Panzer 3 is quite lucky indeed, because that would have been a 12 AP shot into 11 front armor, which is about a 16% chance of penetration. So Ddraig really getting away with that quite nicely, with the Sherman 5 going down to the Panzer 3 there. Cromwell 7 though, that's now come in to back up this push on the bottom side. That should much like the Sherman, honestly, Sherman 5 deal with the Panzer 3 quite well, but obviously the Sherman 5 did not. Firefly coming down to this bottom side, maybe help out a little bit, but the Firefly is really going to have to deal with the Marder and the Jagdpanzer first, and that's something that I'd like to see Mjtheko do. If he can take out the Marder 3 before he engages the Jagdpanzer, that would be ideal. But it looks like Mjtheko is actually going to be relying on a Typhoon AT to get the job done. Looking for the side armor hits here. Now for those of you who don't know, the difference between a Typhoon AT and a normal Typhoon with rockets is the fact that they have just a little bit more accuracy on their rockets, which makes the HE hit more often and therefore do more damage, giving the higher potential to kill. So here comes the Typhoon AT. Does not kill the Jagdpanzer itself, but does disable it, forcing it to fall back and allowing the Firefly to now engage the Marder 3. So the Firefly has plenty of shots to try and find a kill there, but as we can see on the edge of the town here, Ddraig has now employed the return fire strategy, where you do not open up until your opponent gets close. Especially with things like 3-star Panzer grenades, this can work really well with MG42s, because you open up and then the MG42s just go to absolute work. Unfortunately for these Panzer grenadiers on the bottom side, they've run out of MG ammunition, so that's not going to be the case. But as you can see on the airfield, the Firefly's actually failed to kill the Jagdpanzer, and it's going to escape for the time being, which is not good for Mjtheko because he can't find any ground whilst that Jagdpanzer is really still alive, since he's going to be controlling the ground on the airfield. So 57% territory need for Ddraig. He's got 19 minutes until victory. Marder 3 is actually under pressure, and I'd like to see Mjtheko just try and clean that up. Currently wasting shots onto the MG42 here. Best way to deal with that kind of thing is just turn off the HE on the main gun, so you know you're always engaging tanks if you see your Firefly aiming. And the Panzer 4, that's coming up from the town. That could make quite a big difference actually to this engagement on the airfield. Because if the Panzer IV comes around the corner here and engages the Firefly, there's actually quite a large chance that the Firefly will be penetrated by a Panzer IV at that sort of range. So that may be something that Curbs can do to stop the advance of a Firefly. He's also being able to deal with the Cromwell 7 a lot better, since the Panzer IV does have the veterancy, whilst the Cromwell 7 does not. Panzer III comes around the corner, cleans up the Stuart 6, and it seems as though Mjtheko's sort of tank micro hasn't necessarily let him down. I feel like he's been very unlucky, but one thing I have noticed is that each tank keeps trying to engage one by one, and that is something that has not worked out for him at all throughout this game. Now the Firefly does manage to pick up the Marder 3 kill, which is very important, and now we're going to see the duel between the Jagdpanzer and the Firefly. You can see that Ddraig, he's actually turned off the HE on his Jagdpanzer so that he knows when he's engaging the Firefly. Much easier to keep track of. Like I mentioned, Mjtheko should do with his Firefly. So the Panzer III once again being able to chew up infantry that is not supported by any armour due to the Cromwell 7 being forced back. And Ddraig's management of the defence of the edge of this town is just absolutely superb, because he hasn't even had to bring in any more infantry. He brought in one pioneer squad to clean out the motorised rifle leader, but other than that hasn't really had to replace the Panzer Grenadiers throughout the game, and that is like superb management of infantry, especially on a division that suffers for availability. Now the Cromwell 7 though, that's in a really awkward position, and I don't know quite how it got here, but with like another unit on the way, this could potentially be Panzer Grenadiers, but I think it might be Pioneers. Either way, infantry could get very close to this Cromwell 7, and if not, then the Panzer III can just kill that anyway. So it's a very awkward position to have that Cromwell 6 in, and there's not really anything that Mjtheko can do about it now, since there is armour in the way. Panzer IV, it's going to find the shot onto the Cromwell. Sod goes down to the Panzer III. We are going to see a second Jagdpanzer on the field. That's going to be trying to take on the Firefly at close range, but does get taken out. The Firefly still a very powerful beast. Cromwell 6 engaging the Pioneers at close range, going to be pinning those down. Sherman 5 comes around the corner, finds the internal fragment onto the Panzer III. Very important hit there. Maybe allows the Cromwell 6 to get out of this sticky situation. What we can see though is Ddraig's now going to be using the Panzerwerfer to hit the Firefly. Now, is this a move where the Panzer IV is going to go and attack that? I don't think so. We can see, however, that the Panzer III has been taken out. Panzer IV now going to be engaging the Sherman 5. Jagdpanzer just trying to get into a position where it can engage the Firefly at the moment. But two Tempests now coming in for the strafing run onto the Jagdpanzer. Now with the Mobilwagen in play, it did already cause quite a lot of morale damage, and this is really bad news for Mjtheko because both of his Tempests are under threat here. Ddraig can probably shoot down both of these with his ME109 G6R6 because it's perfectly on the tail of both of them. With the Tempest being slightly faster than the ME109, it actually worked in the ME109's favour, and he manages to find a kill onto one of those aircraft. Now the Panzer IV on the bottom side, it has been forced back here, but it's going to be able to take another shot at the Sherman 5. Sherman 5 will be able to fire back and force the Panzer IV back once again. Firefly is still alive on the field though, on the airfield, and that is something. It allows Mjtheko to continue the engagement against the Jagdpanzer, but as you can see, Ddraig's now pushing 1,500 points with this +1, and the edge of this town is only just starting to falter, and it has taken way too long for Mjtheko to get this far. Now, nice weapon jam there actually onto the 232, stops the Cromwell 6 from being under pressure. Another half-track coming in with more infantry though, may be able to get in range of the Cromwell 6. I hope this is Panzer Grenadiers, because if it is, then that's going to be a very dead Cromwell 6. That is a 2-star Panzergren squad with a Panzerfaust, and job done. Panzerschreck, can it find the kill onto the Sherman 5? There is no infantry to support this armour at this current moment in time, so there is potential for a Panzerschreck kill here. Typhoon AT, quite unlucky to kill the Marder 3, but I think that was definitely influenced by the Mobilwagen both on the airfield and in the town. So unfortunate that Mjtheko could not clean up that Marder 3, because that would make engaging the Jagdpanzer that is left much easier for the Firefly. Now, hats off, honestly, to Ddraig for how he has managed this town defense throughout the game. I think he has done absolutely fantastically. Unfortunate for Mjtheko, he definitely lost the dice roll on some of these tank engagements. But I think it mainly comes down to the fact that he has been engaging his tanks one by one, and that is a big problem when it comes to these kind of engagements where you really require your AT or your armor to push. Like, if you require your armor and it's absolutely crucial that it needs to be there, then you need to make sure that you also have your own armor supported by either things like AT guns or more armor, because then if you lose one piece you can still push, whereas if you only have one piece and you lose it, then your push falls apart, just like we've seen. Now, I don't know quite what Mjtheko is doing here, maybe just getting frustrated, but ends up pushing his Firefly right in the face of a Panzer. The Firefly on the airfield eventually gets taken out by the Jagdpanzer. Firefly on the bottom gets taken out by the Panzer. And well, that is all she wrote, as Mjtheko is going to surrender. Both of his Fireflies going down. 27 minutes and 42 seconds it took for Kerbs to defeat Mjtheko. And well, that was quite an interesting game. I quite liked watching that. Kerbs definitely played the town defense very well with the 116th. And really, the unit preservation with that infantry was incredible. Like, the Panzer Grenadiers stayed alive for a solid 25 minutes throughout that game. Maybe a bit less, but yeah, definitely for a long time. In terms of the scores, 2,315 kills to 1,430 losses. There were some questionable engagements, but a lot of luck on the side of Ddraig. I think he definitely utilized that though and took advantage of it in order to win the game. So early on, 6-pounder killed off a couple half-tracks, and I liked the positioning of this 6-pounder, but Ddraig, by the time he had to deal with it, had brought in a Panzerwerfer, which made things a lot easier. Firefly, though, it did manage to do quite a lot of work on the airfield. It took out Jagdpanzer, took out 2 Marder 3s, took out a Befehlpanzer 4. That's really good kills for the Firefly. But he couldn't quite break back into that town, and that made a huge difference in the game, because he'd just lost too much at the start. Like, the infantry engagements between the Marder 3s or not the Marder 3s, like the Flampanzer and like infantry, like the motorized rifles. I'm not sure quite why he brought in Bren Group in M5 half-tracks. I don't really like that combination at all. More rifles or more motorized rifles is always a better shout in my opinion, especially in terms of like early engagements. It looked like Mjtheko actually ran out of infantry before Ddraig did, and that's a problem, especially going against the 116th. But the SPW-232, that did work. It killed the Stuart 6 in the end. That was weapon jammed, I believe, when it found the kill. But the Panzer 3, yeah, these Panzer 3s did really well, actually. And the Jagdpanzer killing off the Cromwell 7 when it came in was quite nice. Another Panzer 3, though, winning the engagement against the Sherman 5 was very, very lucky for Ddraig, and something that Ddraig definitely took advantage of. And again, the Panzer 4 taking out Cromwell was very nice. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Interesting first game between these two. I will be sure to look out for whether or not Mjtheko can bring one back in the second game, because I don't think Mjtheko was far off the skill of Kerbs in terms of micro, that's for sure. I just don't think that his tactics and his decision making throughout the game was as good as it needed to be in order to break through Kerbs' defense, or Ddraig's defense, sorry. But either way, hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.